Good evening, everybody. We're beginning this, this hour of broadcasting, our first of the week. It's going to be a busy hour. We will be going to the President of the United States for his news conference. We will be joined by the Vice President of the United States for an interview with Mike Pence here in just moments. And we're going to bring you up on the latest from the radical left. The radical left mob governing the city of Seattle is set to vote to lies and deceit revealed. Documents showing how the FBI lied to the Senate Intelligence Committee in 2018 about the reliability of the phony Steele dossier. That's one. That's right. The one that the FBI used to launch their investigation of a presidential candidate. But Senator Lindsey Graham doesn't seem willing to question any senators about how that all came to be, who the FBI briefer was to the Senate Intel Committee. He wants to ask rather publicly who it was and see what the FBI says, I guess. And President Trump, once again, putting Americans first. President Trump fed up with the radical Dems' tactics, signing executive orders this weekend to provide support and relief to 18 million Americans out of jobs and who need help quickly. The radical Dems decided they didn't need help at all. The president's executive order provides $400 a week in supplemental unemployment payments, student loan relief through December 31st, eviction protection for renters and homeowners, and a payroll tax holiday for those making under $100,000 through the end of the year. President Trump's move met with the usual disdain and drivel of the radical Dems and rhinos, some of them at least, in Washington. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and rhino Senator Ben Sasse, harmonizing their resistance of President Trump, both called the president's orders, quote-unquote, unconstitutional slop. President Trump today responded on Twitter, tweeting this in part, "Rhino Ben Sasse has gone rogue again. This foolishness plays right into the hands of the radical left Dems." And the president reminding Sasse that it was he who came to the president seeking his support for his election. Well, joining us tonight is the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence. And Mr. Vice President, it is always great to see you and to have an opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you.
May I start with, first of all, the executive orders, because that is so important to millions of Americans who would have no help whatsoever from the radical Dems. 4 weeks of pure stonewalling, slow rolling, and indifference to the needs of Americans who are hurting. Your thoughts?
Well, what the American people saw this weekend was, once again, the decisive leadership of President Donald Trump. After literally weeks of refusing to come to the table, refusing to negotiate in good faith, when we're seeing our economy beginning to reopen, last Friday we saw 1.8 million jobs added to this economy, but there's still many millions of Americans that needed payroll tax relief, that needed an extension of unemployment insurance, and yet the Democrats were willing to let those very things fall by the wayside as they continue to advance their big government, massive spending bill that Speaker Pelosi passed many weeks ago on Capitol Hill. But the president said, enough is enough. He took executive action. We were deferring the payroll tax through the end of this year. That's money in the pocket for working Americans. Right. But then he also used his authority as president to extend unemployment insurance benefits in a fiscally responsible way. We're asking states to pay for 25%, but it's $400 a week more that people who haven't found work yet in this economy can have. That plus help for young people going to school, student loan relief, eviction relief for working Americans. This is a president that said while the radical left continues to dominate the Democratic Party, the Democrats continue to play games on Capitol Hill, President Trump's going to take action to put America first.
And taking action, as you say, to put Americans first, how soon will it be that they will be getting actual relief? How soon will people have money? How soon will they have help in deferring or perhaps giving them time to catch up on payments that would make evictions and foreclosures a moot point?
Well, the president's executive action about evictions, about student loans, takes effect the moment that he signs it. But today, on our weekly conference call with all the nation's governors, we assured them that the unemployment insurance benefits should be being implemented immediately. We also told them that they can use roughly $80 billion in CARES Act funding that hasn't been drawn down by states yet to pay their portion of the extension of unemployment insurance. Look, a lot of Americans are hurting, despite the fact that we had lost 22 million jobs at the height of this pandemic, and as of last week have added 9 million Americans back to the roles of working people in this country. There's many more Americans that need help. The president said we're not going to wait on Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer anymore. We're going to extend unemployment insurance benefits. The Department of Labor and Treasury are working to make that a reality, and we're working to put into effect that effort to defer payroll tax collections to the end of this year. Again, this is just another example of where President Trump said, look, if you're not willing to come to the table and negotiate in a way that puts Americans first, we're going to take action so that Americans cannot be used as pawns in the Democrats' effort to push another massive big government spending bill.
You know, Mr. Vice President, we're looking at cities that are erupting and violence continue to erupt in many cases, whether it's Chicago or Portland. And some of those states have got Democrat city councils as well as mayors and Democratic governors. And I was just thinking as you were talking, do you hear from any of those Democrat governors saying, no, Mr. Vice President, tell Mr. Trump that we don't want the money for our citizens. We don't want immediate help for the people who are hurting. Do you ever hear them saying, no, please just follow along with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and we can catch up with you maybe in September or October?
Lou, that'd be a first. I mean, I used to be a governor, and I respect the role that governors play and have played, especially throughout this coronavirus pandemic. And I think what I consistently hear from governors is how grateful they are that this president has literally spared no expense. We've surged billions of dollars to our states, to our wonderful healthcare workers. We've provided the kind of resources in medicines and PPE and testing to meet this moment. And what I heard today on that conference call with governors is that they want to see the Congress act. I mean, look, President Trump's made it clear, in addition to the executive action that he's taken, we'd like to send another round of checks to the American people. Remember, it was $1,200 per American, $3,400 per family. The president's very open to doing just that. We want to get more support for businesses, the Paycheck Protection Program, and other programs that have allowed businesses to weather the storm of the coronavirus. And we want to get our schools open, Lou, and that's why the president's called for $105 billion to make it possible to open up our K-12 schools, our universities. And we said to the governors today, it's time for them to pick up the phone and call Nancy Pelosi and call Chuck Schumer and tell them to get off the dime, get back to the table, and let's get a deal done. But, not the kind of deal that Speaker Pelosi passed earlier in the House of Representatives. I heard the other day that the bill that they passed actually mentions marijuana more than it mentions jobs. And the American people don't want some pork barrel bill coming out of the Congress when we've got real needs for working families. We've got needs to get our schools open. And we're literally calling on every governor, especially Democrat governors across the country, to call on members of their party in Congress to say, let's get to the table, let's get a deal done that puts Americans first.
Well, we're hearing words that some of these governors are deeply disappointed that Schumer and Pelosi haven't been able to get them a bailout for their basically bankrupt systems. This administration is not going to provide that kind of relief, are you? If there is to be a later negotiation?
Look, The president's made it very clear there's going to be no bailout for badly run states in this country. I mean, the truth is that many states run by Democrats for decades have run up massive deficits, massive debt. And I heard the other day that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are calling for $1 trillion to our states, when in fact, literally, we've got on the table, more than $100 billion for education, another $100 billion to help our states. But President Trump has made it clear we're not going to let liberal Democrats and the radical left use the coronavirus pandemic to bail out states that have been running deficits and debt for decades. We're going to stand up for taxpayers, stand up for fiscal responsibility, even while we get resources to states at the point of the need. One of the points the Treasury Secretary made today to the governors was we've literally been calling governors to ask specifically what they need to implement a back-to-school plan. And the president's request for $105 billion is specifically tailored to the actual per-student cost of returning to school in a safe and responsible way. But no bailouts, Lou. This isn't a blank check for badly run states, and especially those badly run states run by liberal Democrats for decades.
What do you put the odds at right now that governors across the country will join with administration and move to open up those schools? Because whether it's Anthony Fauci, you name it, people from the left, medical experts are saying we need to open those schools. There is a fear of a lost generation here. If we're going to continue this, what's your sense of the odds?
Look, we got to get our kids back to school. I mean, the experts, left, right, and center, have all recognized that distance learning is no replacement for in the classroom, in-person learning. We don't want our kids to fall behind academically, but what the American people also recognize is, kids with special needs, kids with learning disabilities, they get those services at school, and tens of millions of American kids get food and nutritional supplements at school. And so there's far beyond academic. There are real costs to America's kids, and that doesn't even take into account the cost on working families. Many governors, even some Democrat governors, are now beginning to announce that they support a return to back to school because they recognize that for an awful lot of Americans, if their kids can't go back to school, they can't go back to work. I heard a number the other day that only 20% of single parents in America can telework. That means 80% of single parents to go back to work have to go back to work. They got to have their kids back in school. That's why President Trump, from very early on, has made it clear we got to get our kids back. And just so everybody knows, the CDC issued a series of new guideposts a couple of weeks ago, but the first thing they issued was a paper about how it is in the public health interest of our kids to be back in school. So the CDC says for the health of our kids, we say for their academic health, for their future, and for working families, we got to get our kids back to school. It's one more reason why the Democrats on Capitol Hill need to come back to the table. We want to make sure our states have the resources as well as the guidance to safely reopen our school. They can. We're going to continue to stand for it and fight for it on behalf of working families everywhere.
Well, good for you, and the American people desperately need the leadership of this administration to make this happen. Do you have any impression, besides the fact that Dick Durbin is beginning to agree with you on a host of issues, it seems, at least informally, and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are saying maybe they do want to talk now. Do you think they're getting the idea that they have been running here for weeks a video of a elect Trump-Pence 2020 campaigns? Because when you see everything that they're doing, trying to keep schools closed, letting violence run rampant in the cities that are so devastated by decades of Democrat-run administrations in their municipalities. The payoff is pretty ugly, pretty violent, and why would anyone in the world want a Democrat in the White House?
Well, You know, the choice in this election has never been clearer, and the stakes have never been higher. Meaning President Donald Trump, you have someone who's kept more promises than he made to the American people. Rebuild our military, revive the economy with less taxes, less regulation, fought for free and fair trade, appointed conservatives to our courts. But Joe Biden and the radical left and the party of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi is all about taking the country all the way back in the opposite direction. More defense cuts, $4 trillion in higher taxes, a $2 trillion Green New Deal, economic surrender to China. I mean, we heard this weekend from Speaker Pelosi, she actually said that China would prefer Joe Biden to win the upcoming election. And that's because no one's been tougher on China than President Donald Trump. But in one issue after another, the American people are tired of the politics on Capitol Hill, playing politics in the midst of this pandemic. And I truly do believe that come November 3rd, we're going to win a great victory when we win 4 more years for President Donald Trump. But I also believe the American people see what a Democrat majority in the House of Representatives means. And I think we've got a fighting chance not only to reelect a Republican Senate, but to elect a new Republican majority in the House of Representatives and move our nation forward.
The Attorney General over this week, and making a comment about Black Lives Matter protests, the violence that we're seeing in those Democratic-run cities. I want to just run, if I may, a soundbite for the audience to show what the Attorney General of the United States now says about Black Lives Matter and the movement that they have unleashed on the country. It is not failing by any stretch of the imagination. It is having great influence, at least within certain communities and certain age groups. Let's roll that from Attorney General William Barr, please.
They are a revolutionary group that is interested in some form of socialism, communism. They're essentially Bolsheviks. Their tactics are fascistic. It's a new form of urban guerrilla warfare.
And this president has, weeks and weeks and weeks ago, been saying we have to control this violence and establish law and order in these Democrat-run cities. The Democrats aren't doing it, and the national left-wing media is excoriating the president because he wants to preserve the lives of citizens, protect communities, and establish law and order. Where do we go from here? Where this president has proved his leadership, this is a tough issue, as you well know. Where does the administration go with this now?
Well, President Trump has no higher priority than the safety and security of the American people, Lou. And I want to promise you that we're going to continue to surge resources and personnel into cities that are deeply impacted, like Chicago, Seattle, Portland, and other communities and New York City, where literally the local leadership has utterly failed to quell the violence on the streets. Now, that being said, all along the way, remember when shortly after the murder of George Floyd on the streets of Minneapolis, we saw the mayhem there. President Trump called on the governor of Minnesota to deploy the National Guard. He said, either you do it or we will. Governor of Minnesota did just that and brought peace to the streets. He took a strong stand. We said we're not going to let Antifa and these radical riotous protesters destroy the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon. We deployed federal personnel there to protect the courthouse stand against the rioters. He made it clear to the governor of Oregon that either she steps up to secure the streets of Portland or we would. And the governor of Oregon did that. They deployed local law enforcement. They deployed the state police. The rioting is continued, and we'll continue to call on local officials to do their job, and most importantly, let the courageous men in law enforcement at the state and local level in their communities do their job. But make no mistake about it, whether it's Operation Legend, where we're deploying federal resources from the Justice Department, but we are not going to stand by while these rioters and these radical leftists tear apart our cities. And this president's prepared to take action necessary if it fails. If states and local communities fail to act to protect their citizens, we will.
Vice President Mike Pence, always great to sit down and talk with you, and appreciate your time, sir. Vice President Pence. Up next, the president, scheduled to hold a news briefing this hour, will be bringing his news conference to you live. Also, does Senator Lindsey Graham really want to get to the bottom of Obamagate? Or is he playing some sort of weird game that only he understands? He really is a confusing fellow, a confounding fellow. No matter what your politics. We take that up right after the break, and my new book, available for pre-order. It's called The Trump Century: How Our President Changed the Course of History Forever. You can get your copies at thetrumpcentury.com, amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com, and send a few copies to the City Hall in Portland, Oregon. They could use a read-up. We'll be right back. Stay with us. We're starting the week off with a rally on Wall Street. Stocks were mixed. The Dow Jones Industrials, nothing mixed about its direction. Solidly higher, up 357 points on the day. The S&P gained 9 as it moves toward an all-time record high. The Nasdaq down 43, however. Technology taking it a little tough today. Volume on the big board, 4.4 billion shares. Crude oil up 2%, now above $42 a barrel. And a reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Senator Lindsey Graham this weekend revealing draft FBI talking points used by the FBI to lie to the Senate Intelligence Committee in February of 2018 about the reliability of the Steele dossier. Senator Graham, always a man with a plan and at least 2 points of view on anything, says he's going to get to the bottom of this by writing to FBI Director Christopher Wray. Senator Graham may not even need that letter, though. The FBI talking points released by his committee are dated February 14, 2018. According to previously released documents from the Department of Justice, and everybody there over at the Senate Judiciary Committee let the senator know that the former Associate Deputy Attorney General, Scott Schools, sent an email on the very same day saying that he will be at the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence with Andy like most of the day. Now, it would not be a stretch of inferential logic to assume that Andy is none other than former acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe. Perhaps we here at Lou Dobbs Tonight are solving this mystery. Well, the truth is that the conservative treehouse has been solving this mystery for quite some time. We would urge the committee to go over and read through their offerings. It always pays off. Volume 3 of the Senate Intelligence Committee's own Russia report also shows Andy McCabe was interviewed by the committee on, are you ready for this date, Senator Graham? February 14th, 2018. Graham's office tells us they have no comment on our research, but assured us his letter to Christopher Wray is in the works. Yes, sirree. We also asked Graham's office why he hasn't just walked over, asked the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee just who it was from the FBI that briefed the committee. We've yet to hear. We'll be talking with Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton about this and much more right after these quick messages. Stay with us. We're waiting for the president. Joining us tonight, I am always pleased to say, is Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. He has a new book, A Republic Under Assault, the left's ongoing attack on American freedom, available for pre-order, and pre-order it you should. We highly recommend it to you. Tom, good to have you with us. Senator Graham seems to not be paying attention. He really wants to know who was briefing the Senate Intelligence Committee in February of 2018, and we just told him. And Conservative Treehouse has told him. And any number of people have told him. The names are out there. But even all of that aside, why not just walk down the way and say to the good senator from North Carolina, who chairs the committee, or did, he's on temporary repost, what the heck happened in the briefing? Why not ask Mitch McConnell, the chief of staff? What is going on in the Senate Judiciary Committee under this extraordinary person?
Well, it's been years that the Justice Department and the FBI have been thumbing their nose at Congress and the Senate, and there's been no pushback, and they've been made fools of, generally speaking, there in the Senate. And if I were Senator Graham, I'd call in the FBI director tomorrow to answer questions. He's responsible for this, and the idea that if there's any question, you've got evidence of a crime that took place, and if that's an emergency, and so we should bring the FBI director in immediately. You also have simultaneously Senator Johnson issuing a subpoena to the FBI director on Crossfire Hurricane. They're so obstruction that the cover-up continues under Director Wray. It's a real problem that even his friends in the Senate are having to subpoena him.
Yeah, it's pretty stunning that that Wray is a friend of the FBI director, but I'm sure that he's actually worried a little bit because he saw that withering examination of Sally Yates by the senator from South Carolina. I probably thinks he couldn't hold up to that pressure. Tom, you get the last quick word here on where we're headed with Obamagate.
Well, if he's going to give Sally Yates a pass and Rod Rosenstein a pass, then the hearings are for naught. Both knew or should have known those applications were fraudulent. They were obviously on their face fraudulent. So he shouldn't be giving any of these folks a pass. Maybe turn over the hearings to Senator Lee or Senator Cruz or someone like that.
Yeah, well, there it is. And I had such high hopes for Senator Graham when he started going after the origins of Obamagate. I thought it'd be hard-hitting, and I'm a little disappointed. Tom Fitton, thanks for being with us, the head of Judicial Watch. Up next, red storm rising, China's military increasing the level of their aggression in the South China Sea, the Strait of Taiwan as well. Michael Pillsbury with me next. My new book, The Trump Century, How Our President Changed the Course of History Forever. Available for pre-order now at the Trump Century, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tara.
Breaking news, the Galapagos Islands off the coast of Ecuador are one of the planet's true treasures, and a number of ships within a massive Chinese fishing fleet near those precious Galapagos Islands are sending out false signals about their locations, misidentifying their locations. Some of the fleet sending out false signals or turning off their GPS systems to avoid detection near the World Heritage Site. Ecuador's Navy says that fleet is now made up of 340 commercial fishing vessels. China's military becoming increasingly aggressive amid talks in Taipei today between Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar and the President of Taiwan. Azar leading a delegation ordered there by President Trump, and Chinese fighter jets today briefly crossed into Taiwanese airspace, as they frequently do. Satellite images also reportedly show China's PLA deploying amphibious armored vehicles and mobile missile launchers near the South China Sea. Joining us tonight is Dr. Michael Pillsbury, Director of the Center for Chinese Strategy at the Hudson Institute. Mike, we're going to be cramped as always for time. I want to go first to what you make of the increasing military activity by the PLA in the South China Sea.
Lou, I think it's a mistake for some people to dismiss these Chinese activities as just bluff or rhetoric. China has a long history, about 50, 60 years, of using force or psychological shock effect on their neighbors. If they try that on President Trump and on American units, I think it could lead to really serious reactions. So I'm quite concerned about these increasing Chinese exercises.
And I want to turn to also an important report that you have produced for the Hudson Institute on President Trump's China strategy. Give us a sense of your findings and thoughts, as well as where we can all go to read up on it.
Well, at the Hudson website, you just dial in Guide to Trump China Strategy. What'll come up is 200 statements from the president himself to all of his administration on what I think is a very clear, coherent China policy. Each department puts this kind of thing out, but no one's ever done it for the whole administration. So the president and his team encouraged me, and they actually picked out things they thought were significant to assemble this report. You can search it. You can use it for speeches. You can use it for write your own book. It's like the definitive guide to the most important things President Trump and his team have been saying about China policy. It's quite comprehensive. It includes outer space, the Arctic, human rights, technology, Huawei, and it's free. Best of all parts, it's free.
And best of all, led by Michael Pillsbury at the Hudson Institute. We'll do that. I want to also very quickly, we're getting a 2-minute warning from the president. He's going to be stepping up here. But your sense of what you heard from a group of Chinese members of important think tanks, their tone in discussing the U.S.-China relations.
Yes, I try and stay in touch with the Chinese, Lou, and this is quite surprising. They're now beginning to talk about a war between the U.S. and China. It's beyond just trade war or human rights war. They're talking about the Americans are pushing us too much. They're crowding us all around our borders, and China may have to turn to the use of force to make its political points. I've really never heard this kind of direct threat before from Chinese scholars who advise Xi Jinping. So it's to be taken very seriously.
And they're, speaking of pressing, they're pressing by bringing that commercial fishing fleet into the heritage wildlife site of the Galapagos. It's outrageous, and the world should not stand for it for a minute. Michael Pillsbury, thanks very much. We'll talk to you soon, perhaps as early as tomorrow, I understand it. Dr. Michael Pillsbury, thanks so much. We appreciate it. The president is coming up soon. He's holding a press conference. We'll be holding a press conference at the White House. Incredible video tonight of a close call for a woman in Louisiana, and it was all caught on a doorbell camera. When I say close call, I mean close call. That lightning bolt struck a tree near the woman's house, debris sent flying through the air and landing within inches of her face. The woman just stepping outside her home at the very, very moment that lightning bolt chose to visit the neighborhood. She says she was only a small step away from being seriously injured, or perhaps worse. Well, luck and God with her on that moment. Up next, President Trump to hold a news briefing, and this hour we'll be bringing that to you live. We're coming right back after these quick messages, even sooner if the president steps out. We'll be right back. Larry Elder, host of The Larry Elder Show on the Salem Radio Network, executive producer of the documentary Uncle Tom, an oral history of the American black conservative. And as you know, Larry, we're jammed here waiting for the president as well. Very quickly, your thoughts about the... well, Larry, you're not going to believe this. The president is walking out. He and I have been choreographing this for weeks now. I've got a little work to do. Here, let's listen in.
Talking about some mail-in voting that just was revealed, just the news. 500,000 incorrect absentee ballot applications were sent all across the state of Virginia, including to many dead people. This was an unprecedented mailing flub that's heightened concerns about the integrity of expanding mail-in voting and mail-in voting efforts. It's a disaster. All over Virginia, 500,000 votes. So that's something you have to think about. We don't want to have a rigged election. I know that. And you have to be very careful when you mention, as you constantly do, Russia, or you mention China, or you mention Iran, or others that attack our election system. And when you have this mail-in voting, it's very susceptible. It's something that can be easily attacked by foreign countries and by, frankly, Democrats and by Republicans. And I think that it's something you have to start thinking about very seriously. Our system's not equipped for it. The post office is not equipped for it. And people should vote like they did in World War I and World War II. And your numbers will be, in 90 days or less, your numbers will be very good, I think, much better on the coronavirus or the China virus. But it's something you have to look at and say, this is just crazy. This just came out, 500,000 incorrect ballot applications sent all over the state of Virginia to many people that weren't living. They had some sent to pets, dogs. This is what we're going to get into, and it's going to be a disaster. And it's going to be thought of very poorly. It's going to hurt our country. After our news conference Saturday night and the pro-growth announcement, we're pro-jobs, pro-health safety, executive orders, the stock market went up 358 points today. So we issued those executive orders, and the stock market went up 358 points today. It's quite a reaction. The Dow Jones and the S&P 500 are now up 50% since March. 50%. Think if you had money in there, if you put your money in March, you're 50%. The NASDAQ index continues to set new records. It's been up over 14 times, new record in NASDAQ. And the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones are going to be, I mean, the way they're going, it looks like they're just about going to be topping records hopefully soon. Excuse me?
Ladies and gentlemen, we just received word from R. John Roberts at the White House. You're seeing the president step away from the podium and return to the other part of the White House. Shots have been fired, apparently, at the White House, at least reports of those shots. I want to bring in Larry Elder, host of the Larry Elder Show on the Salem Radio Network, and as I said, also the executive producer of the documentary Uncle Tom. Larry, this is a very difficult moment because we don't know precisely what's happened. We know, according to John Roberts, that there are reports of shots fired. We know absolutely nothing other than that. But within the context of this country right now, seeing so much violence in so many cities across the nation, it would be deeply troubling no matter what. But in the context of this year and the direction this country is going, it's profoundly disturbing. Your thoughts?
It is profoundly disturbing, Lou, but we don't know what happened, obviously. We do know that the president is safe, obviously, because he was just speaking. But whatever happens, maybe this is a sign that shows the country, left, right, and in the middle, we all are Americans first. We all need to come together. No matter how you feel about this president, no matter how you feel about this administration, he was duly elected. He is an American president, and he ought not be displaced until he is duly elected out of office. And so I hope whatever happens is a rallying cry to America that our democracy is fragile. We have to fight for it. And when bad things happen, let's remember that we have a lot more in common than we have apart. We are all Americans. We are all one country.
And we're waiting here, Larry, as we are talking for more word. And I want to ask our producers right now: have we got anything, any kind of contact right now from John Roberts or any of our folks at the White House that they can give us anything more? As soon as you've got that, please let me know. You're right. I mean, there is so much focus in this country right now on that which is intended to divide us. We talk about our differences, our commonalities. Our commonalities outweigh the differences by orders of magnitude. We have permitted this to divide us. The Bolsheviks, as the Trotskyites, as the Attorney General said. Whether you're talking about Black Lives Matter, Antifa. But this country right now, you started by saying, no matter how you feel about this president. Those are words that I couldn't imagine anyone saying 50 years ago, no matter how you feel about this president. There are a lot of motion raging in the 1960s as well. But people didn't talk about their ideology being driven by a like or a hatred or a dislike of a president. Many didn't like Kennedy. Many didn't like Johnson. Right. Many didn't like Nixon. But it wasn't an animating feature of the ideological poles in the country then, and it was a polarized nation without question. This is quite something different we're experiencing now, as if emotion should be actionable for anyone based on ideology.
Well, that's right. And I think part of it is because this president, unlike any other president, has taken on the media and has popularized the expression fake news. And I think, therefore, he's made an enemy out of the media. Remember that adage, never make an enemy out of somebody who can buy ink by the barrel? Well, Donald Trump has made an enemy out of an industry that can buy ink by the barrel. And remember, 25% of the Democrats didn't even come to his inauguration, and several of them have not come to any of his State of the Union speeches. I've never seen the like of that. And so I'm hoping that no matter what happens, maybe, just maybe, this is a sign that we should remember that we are all Americans first. Ronald Reagan was not very popular. There was an attempt on his life, as you well know, and his popularity went up because people realized that this was a great guy, and no matter how you felt about him, he is still an American. After 9/11, we all joined together. The president's approval rating was almost 90% after 9/11. So sometimes it takes a galvanizing outside event to remind Americans that we have a lot more in common than we have apart. But thankfully, we know that at least President Trump, from what we know right now, it's fine.
Yeah, he is obviously safe and well guarded within the White House. We also have just received a report that the briefing room has been locked down, which is quite a moment. I can't recall that ever happening, but there it is. And the North Lawn reports of activity and Secret Service around that area again. Without any knowledge of what is actually going on there. But again, all of this began about 5 minutes ago when reports of shots fired near the White House. John Roberts reporting from the White House. And within seconds of his report, the president escorted from the briefing room by Secret Service very calmly and very quietly as they left the room. And what you see are the journalists assembled in the press briefing room, and they don't have any, right now, they are locked down there till further notice. So, Laura, let me turn back to what you were saying. These outside events. We've had a string since May when George Floyd was killed while in custody of the Minneapolis Police Department that was used to create demonstrations and protests that ultimately became and very quickly became riots and looting and nights of extraordinary violence. We've had those outside events, those external events, almost every night in some part of this country ever since. Your thoughts?
But even with that, Lou, if you look at the you look at the poll numbers. You ask blacks, do they want the police funding to be at the same level it is or higher? Ask whites the same question. Ask independents the same question. All three groups say yes. We want it to be about the same or higher.
Right. And Larry, I've got to begin this the way we began this conversation on this unusual hour.
Okay, no problem.
I've got to interrupt you to say that we're going to return to the White House briefing room. We understand that they're going to resume here in about 30 seconds. And as I said 30 seconds, Larry, I was informed by my producer, not yet. But we are going to say thank you. We appreciate your time and your patience and understanding with us, Larry, and look forward to talking with you again soon. Thanks so much. Larry Elder. That is going to be it for us unless the president actually walks into that briefing room to continue the briefing. But meanwhile, the reporters remain in lockdown. They're being told that they will resume the briefing. The issue is just when, not as soon as we were first led to believe. Tomorrow night here, we hope you'll join us. Sidney Powell, John Solomon, and Charlie Hurd will be among our guests tomorrow. And we couldn't leave you without reminding you about my new book, The Trump Century, How Our President Changed the Course of History Forever, available for pre-order. Get your copy at Amazon.com. Thanks for being with us. Good night from Sussex.